Lolet. So this will be a tutorial on how to use Meta Spark AR. So in this tutorial, let's try creating a filter using particle system. Okay, now let's open up Spark AR. And let's open up a blank project. So for this, let's change the camera view to this world view. Okay, it has already been selected. Okay, let's maximize this. Okay, so for this project I have prepared a texture. So I want to create a filter wherein there's a snowfall. It looks like there's a snowfall. Okay, using that particle filter. So what I have imported is a PNG file. So as you can see here, so it looks like a snowflake. Okay, so we'll use this as the texture. Okay, so now, so under this scene panel at the bottom you see this plus icon. Okay, this will be used to add objects to the scene panel. Okay, so we'll be using particle system. Select this and click on insert. Now you can see the particle emitter with the particles emitted here. Okay, so for this I want it to be a world filter. World filter in the sense like the camera and the effect are independent. If you see here, this emitter is under the camera, so this emitter is a child of the camera object. So we want the emitter to be independent of the camera. So what I mean by a child object is that when you move this camera, okay, you can see on the viewport that the emitter is moving along with the camera, right? So we want the emitter to be in position where it's independent of the camera. Okay, okay, so let's see, simple. Just click on this emitter and then bring at the bottom. So if you see that the camera and emitter are on the same indentation, it means that it's no longer a child of the emitter. So let's try moving this camera. Okay, so you can see that the emitter stays stationary when compared, even if I move the camera, the emitter position does not change. Okay, so they are now independent. It means that even if we move the camera, the emitter position will not change. Okay, so now we have the emitter, we have the snowflake. So this emitter, what we want to do, we want this emitter so if you see this, let me zoom in. Okay, so let me zoom in. So if you see that this emitter, the particles emitted by this emitter, it does not have any material. So when it does not have any material, it's represented with this black and blue grid. Okay, so click here, and then if you go to this side, this is the inspector panel. Let's try adding a material. If you scroll down, you see this material, right? Click here to add a material. Okay, so if you can see that the material coming up on this assets panel. Okay, let's try renaming by right clicking on this material. Let's rename it to snowflake material. So it's a good practice to name the items. Okay, so for simple project you might feel that okay, without renaming the particles it's okay, but when there are multiple material, multiple texture, without naming it, sometimes it's confusing. Okay, so we have this material. Now you can see that this emitter uh, is grayed out, right? So now let's try changing the property of this particle. Okay, so before that let's try changing the uh, emitter. So when we click on emitter, there are two parts. Okay, so one part, you can divide this part into two sections. Okay, the upper portion, so this will be used to set the properties of the emitter, this part emitter, and then the lower portion will be used to set the properties of the particle that has been emitted by the emitter. Okay, now let's pose, if you scroll here we can see it here, but let's try positioning it, this particle, a little higher. Okay, so if you can see this, I want to create a filter wherein the particles are moving downward. Okay, as a default the particle moves, the particles are emitted upward. Okay, so in order to do that, you can do this in two ways. Okay, so if you see on the top, this is this will be used to move the position, okay, here and there like this. Okay, so let's reset it to 0 so that it goes back to normal. Okay, okay, and then the second one, it will be used to change the direction like this. So if we move it here, you can see that it's moving downward, right? Moving downward. Okay, using this, or else you can use this rotation. Okay, if you set it to 180, let's see what happens. Okay, 180, 0, 0. Now you can see that the particles are moving downward, right? And regarding the position, let's try moving it upward. You can see that the camera position is here, right? You can see that the camera position is here and the particles are emitted here, right? So I like this view. Okay, this is what I intended, and yeah, I want to move it like this. Right now, as you can see, so the particles are emitted here, right? So right now the particles are all white and we are not able to see. So if you want to make changes to the particle, you have to come down here and then make the changes here. Okay, and then if you want to make changes to the properties of the particle, click here on the material and then change the shader type to flat. Okay, so flat shader types are suitable for 2D filters. Okay, and it does not, the material does not uh, uh, the material's property does not change to the environment and light. Okay, so let's provide a texture. Okay, let's provide texture, snowflake texture, and now you can see that the particle is very small and then it's not even coming to the position of the camera. So we want the particles to come down. Okay, we want the particle to be a bigger size. Okay, and then I want the particle to come down and it lasts, and I want it to last longer, the particle to fall to the ground, right? But it disappears here, so we need to increase the lifespan, we need to increase the size. Okay, and I don't want the particle to be coming out from a point, right? Snowfalls, it comes from a large area, right? So for that we need to make changes to the emitter. Okay, So let's first try changing the properties of the emitter, not the particle. Okay, so I want the particle to be emitted from a very large position, not just from a single point. Okay, for that you have to come to this section, emitter, type, and see, right now it sets to point. You can change it to line. Okay, so if you select it to line, it will the particles will be emitted from a line, and if you select it from if you select this plane, the particles will be emitted from a flat surface, and if you select ring, the particles will be dropped down from a ring shape emitter. Okay, for the so I want the particles to fall in a circle, right? And then for the emitter type, so it asks for a value of the radius. Okay, so what does this radius value? There are two sections. Okay, so consider this ring type emitter as having two circles. Okay, two circles. Okay, so the first value will be the value of the inner circle, and the second value will be the value of the outer circle. Okay, so I want the value of the inner circle to be as small as possible. Okay, and so we can set it to 0, or we can set it to, and then set this value to, say, let's try with 10. Okay, and one thing, the particles appearing, the particle seems to be dropping down from a large area, right? Okay, now we have this, and the space. Okay, so space we have selected it to world, meaning that it's going to be used for world effects, wherein the camera and the emitter objects are independent. Birth rate. Okay, right now we can see that the particles are falling out of emitted from a very large area. However, since however, the particles are very limited. Okay, this we can control with the birth rate. So birth rate, this number is represented with the number of particles per second. So right now, since it's 20, it means that 20 particles are emitted per second, right? So let's try changing it to 100. Let's see what happens. And by the way, if you, so these values, I'm not sure how much is good and how much is bad. It just come up with trial and error. That's it. Excuse me. Yeah, it just comes up with trial and error. Okay, I set it to 100. Okay, so now it seems like more particles seems to be showing up here, right? It seems like more particles seems to be falling out from the sky, right? Okay, let's see. We are going to make more changes to the properties of the emitter and the particle. Okay, let's move on to the next property, spray angle. So if you, right now the particle seems to be falling out from the sky in a straight line, perpendicular. Okay, if you want to tilt the falling angle along the x-axis, along the y-axis, along the z-axis, okay, you can make the changes here. So right now, for the time being, let's keep it at 0. So let it fall in a straight line. Okay, speed. Okay, let's see what happens with speed. Let's see if I set it to 1, what happens. See this, the particles are falling very rapidly. So it was set it to 0.2, so it feels like a hailstorm. Okay, so if you make changes to this value, you don't you can think of more creative ways to create more filters. So right now 0.2 is suitable for snowflake. If we set it to 1, it might be suitable for rainfall, right? So it looks like a rainfall, right? So but we are trying to create a snowflake, a snowfall effect. So Let's try with 0.2. Okay, it seems reasonable. And this percentage, so percentage, this percentage is, if you want to create a variation in the speed, okay, so this will give a variation of about plus 40% plus minus 40%. Okay, there will be a variation. Okay, so not when we set a value of this, when we give a value in this percentage section, it will give us a variation in the speed. We set it to 0, everything, if we set it to 0, everything will fall at the same rate. Okay, but if you give it a variation of 40%, there will be a variation of 40% of 0.2 plus minus regarding the speed of the falling particles. Okay, so right now, as we have already discussed, the particle size is very small, right? Let's try increasing the particle size. Let's try with 1. Okay, I will try. You can see that it's too large. Okay, let's try it with 1.1. So now, so yeah, and before we move further, let's try changing the color of the particles, because with this white background and the white particle, it's difficult to identify, right? So let's click on this material and let's try changing the color to a more, yeah, so now it's more, yeah, distinguishable from the background, right? Okay. Okay, let's continue with changing the properties of the particle. Okay, let's try moving the camera and see how it looks like. Is it big? Is it small? This particle looks more of a fireflies instead of snowflake. It just blink and goes away. It just blink and go away. It's due to the short lifespan. Okay, so let's go to the particle section. Okay, so let's keep it to 0.1 for now, and scale. Okay, let's give a variation in scale, so 20%. Okay, the particle size, if you keep the scale variation to 0, then all the particles will be of the same size. If you give a variation of 20, so the particle size will differ by 20%, plus minus 20%. Some particle will be bigger than 0.1 percentage, some particle will be smaller than 0.1 percentage. So there is some variation in the size that has been emitted. Okay, so right now you can see that the particle pops up, goes away, pops up, goes away. This is handled by the value of the lifespan. Okay, so let's try changing it to 1, so the particle should last for 1 second. Okay, still slow. Let's try 10. So right now the particles will stay on for about 10 seconds. Okay, you can see that the particles are falling, right? So if I tilt the camera upward, you can see that here the some empty space is available here. So let's try moving this emitter upward, higher, as much as higher. So it feels like when you move the camera upward, you can see that even if you move the camera directly above your hand, you can see that the particle falling from the sky, right? Okay, now, so right now consider the particles are falling from the sky, falling to the ground and disappearing, right? Right now you can see that the screen is filled with particle. Okay, so it seems like it's too much. Okay, so, or the size of the particle is large, the number of particles is large. Okay, because more particles on the screen, even if the number of particles emitted are the same. Okay, let's try changing the, and then let's also set a value variation. So let's about 30%. Okay, some particle will stay on the screen for more than 10 seconds, some particle will stay on the screen for less than 10 seconds. So there is some variation. Okay, So while changing the value, you can see that when we set the value birth rate 100 particle per second, it seems to be little high. Okay, so what can we do? So we can try changing. So if you look on this camera, you can see that the particle looks fine, right? It's just that, so we have to consider the view on the camera. Okay, view on the camera, it's little too high, but not that much. So let's try changing it to a value about 8, value of about 80 particles per second. Okay, let's see how it looks. And you might have a feeling that the particles are a little large, right? So snowflakes, it's not that large, but one thing I have to remind you, there will be a slight difference in how it looks on this simulator and how it looks on your camera. So yeah, let's keep it at this size for now, and let's test it out on the phone and then see if it's fine. So, and the one thing, there's a section called warm up. Okay, so this feature we'll need this feature when we want to load the effects, like the falling effects, when you open the camera. If it sets to 0, once you open the filter, the falling, the effect will start. The falling of the snowflakes will start once we open the filter. But if we set it to about 5 seconds, okay, if we set it to about 5 seconds before we open the filter, 5 seconds before we load the filter, 5 seconds we use the filter, the effect will start, will be in effect. Okay, and this is a important feature. Scale particle size to be okay, in my opinion. You can change the size based on your preference. Okay, and the next item we have is spin. Okay, if you check this falling particle, okay, the particles are falling in a straight line. Okay, let's see if we change this value. So this is in degree. Okay, so if we change the value to, so let's try 90 degree, let's see what happens. See this, the falling particles start rotating, right? So 90 degree is, so I change it to 90 degree to show you the effect. So I want it to be about, say, 45 degree. Let's see what happens. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I'm happy with that. And let's always add variation value. This is in percentage. Okay, variation value gives, so if everything is spinning at the same rate, it looks very unnatural. Okay, so if you add some variation, it looks very natural. Okay, let's add a variation about 20%. So some particle will be spinning at about 45 degrees, some particle will be spinning at about more than 45, and some will be less than 45 degree. And what about this tilt value? Okay, so let's remove this tilt value, spin value for now, and I'll show you what is this tilt value all about. So this will be in degree as well. So let's set it the tilt value to about 90 degree. Okay, what happens? So if you observe this carefully, so when the particle falls, okay, when the particle falls, this is in a straight line. Okay, so if I set it to 90 degree, let's compare the next particle that falls. Okay, so the particle is tilted, right? the particle is tilted. Let's try a different value, 60 degree. When the particle falls, it's tilted at an angle of 60 degree. Okay, so I want to set this value to about 45, 30 degree. Okay, and add some variation of about 20%. Okay, and as the particle falls, I want this to spin. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Shape. Okay, so shape, how the shape was used. Okay, so what are the shapes that are available? Okay, we have plane shape. Plane shape are suitable for 2D objects. If I select cube, let's see what happens. It seems like cubes, ice cubes, with the texture of the snowflake is attached on the surface. Right. Next, let's try sphere. So it looks like the particles are falling here, and then the texture is attached on the surface of the sphere. Let's try torus. Okay, torus, I consider it as the pill shape. Okay, so same thing, the pill shape. And then cylinder, we have cylinder shape. Okay, and we have star shape, and we have triangle base pyramids. Okay, so we'll use plane shape for now. Force. So let's look at this property. Okay, if we check mark this acceleration, let's see what happens. We have a property called strength. So right now you can see here, so this is set to minus 0.05. Okay, let's change it to 1. Let's see what happens. Y value, up and down value, it went up, right? It just went up from the point of emission. Let's change its value to minus 1. It just came down. Okay, so the falling particle is affected by this value. Okay, so 0.05. So right now this is okay. If I set this value to 1, let's see what happens. It looks like the wind is blowing away the snowflake particle, right? Okay, let's change it back to 0. Let's see what happens if I change this value g value to 1. It looks like the wind is blowing the particle away. It looks like the wind is particle away from the screen when I set it to value to 1. So if you want to create filters wherein you want to mimic the particles moving away from the screen, this is the place where you can use this these changes, right? If I change it to minus 1, what happened? It will feel like the particle will come towards me, right? The particle is coming towards me. Up and down, Y. Okay, and then towards the camera, away from the camera, G, and then sideways, X. Okay, let's change its value to, so it looks like the particle coming towards me, right? Moving towards me. So this will be a very helpful tool when we want to create effects, more creative effects. Okay, let's change this value to 0. Okay, so to give an illusion of wind affecting the falling particle, I just want to set a value of this x-axis. Okay, axis. So let's give a small view. You might have observed that when I set the value to 1, it's blown away really hard. So let's see what happens if I set some smaller value. Let's try with 0.5. Let's see what happens. Okay, the particles are moving, are blown little slightly. Okay, so but still strong. So let's try a value of about 0.2. Let's see what happens. Okay, still strong. 0.1. Okay, share this view. Point 0.09. The particles are falling. The wind is affecting the falling particle. The particles are falling. The wind is affecting the falling particle. Right? Yeah. I'm happy with this. Okay. The particles falling, but at the same time, wind is affecting. It looks like wind is affecting the falling particle. And the next thing, drag, linear, and rotation. Okay. So what does this? We have two values, linear and rotation. Okay. Let's turn off this acceleration for now. Okay. So let it fall straight to the ground. Okay. So linear drag. So as the particle falls, okay, if you want to give an illusion of some dampen, let's suppose if the particles are falling in water, let's give a value of 1. Okay, let's see what happens. So start looking at this particle. It feels like the particles are hanging in the sky. They are no longer falling. It's falling, but because of this linear drag, the particles are damp. Okay, so let's try reducing the value to understand it better. I think 0.5 is still strong. Let's try a value of 0.01. So what happens? The particle starts falling. So this one, it will be suitable for falling lips. Okay, when the lip fall, but because of the aerodynamic, there is some damp. Okay, there is some. Okay, and then just change the value back to 0 and rotation. So right now if you see this rotation of the particle, it's rotating very smoothly. There's no friction, counter friction. Okay, so if I set a value of 1, let's see what happens. So see this, the particles are no longer rotating. Okay, but I want it to rotate, but at the same time slight friction to the rotation, not a very smooth 1.01. Let's try. Let's see what happens. The particles are falling with the rotation, but it seems like there's some dampness to the rotation of the falling particle. Okay, I'm happy with this. Let's add the acceleration back. Okay, so that the particles are falling, but at the same time there's some friction on the fall, there's some wind on the fall. I'm really happy with this. Okay, so this is a place where we can check the properties of the falling particle. If you see the sky, it feels like the sky is filled with falling snowflakes, right? Yeah, I'm really happy with this. So now what else? So yeah, it's nice. So we don't want red snowflakes, we want white snowflakes. Okay, we have to go to the material, and then we see that we selected the flat material. Since we are going to use 2D material, I've tried with physically based material as well, so that the particle, the snowflakes are affected by the line, but the flat one's better. So we want it to be white color. Okay, right now you'll not be able to see because of the white background. Okay, white background and the white snowflakes. Okay, so let's try changing the video feed to show how it looks like. See, This is a white background. Okay. Everything is white background, so that's difficult to identify. Okay. So we will test this out in the outside environment. So someone with black t-shirt. Yeah. So if there is a person, so this guy has black t-shirt, but there's lots of white background. There's also white background, so it's difficult to identify, right? Yeah, but you can see that, yeah? Snowflakes. It feels like snowflakes are falling, right? I'm really happy with this. If there is a way to change the background of this simulated video, I'll be really happy. So there's no way to change the background, but as you can see, it feels like snowflakes are falling on our effects, right? Let's change it to red to see the effect. Okay, you can see that snowflakes are falling, right? So change it the background, white background. You can see that snowflakes are, even if you turn it directly above your head, you can see the snowflakes are falling. You can see that the surrounding 3D environment is completely filled with the snowflakes. Okay, change it to white. Okay, and that's done. Yeah. So let's check some of the, let's see if we can manipulate more material. I think this will be enough. So we don't have to make changes to the environment since we are using a flat material. Yeah. So this, so you can click on publish, okay, and then add experience, okay. So there's a warning here, right? So we have to add an experience. So sharing experience, you can insert like this, and then you can add more experience if you want to use it for ads, if you want to use it for video calling effect, right? And then click on done, and then what it's required, you have to record a demo video and then upload it. While you upload it to Spark AR Hub, and then you can use this option to test it out on Instagram, your Facebook, your Spark player. Yeah. So this was, I guess we can wrap this tutorial up. So this was a small tutorial on how to use particle system in Spark AR. Thank you.